right. I believe we're live. Welcome, welcome, welcome to ROI Live in 5. We've gotten so much good feedback from this. So I'm so glad that you guys are loving it. We are sending it out via a newsletter every week once we do this. And that's where we're getting most of our feedback. But would love to hear, what you guys want to hear about, what you feel like you need with these little specials that we're doing. So feel free to send us topics. Today's topic, Steve is with me, and we thought it would be fun to talk really about selling a job in the hiring process and how important that is and why it's important. And so I'm going to kick it to you, Steve, so that you can
Yeah.
kind of walk us through this. But talk to us about how there might be an ROI around that and what this looks like.
Yeah, so this is something I've seen a few times now in clients that we've worked with, and this is just an area I think that we need more education because the market of hiring is always changing. It is like any other market, and the labor market is something that's really important to think about. And so one of the things I think that's really worth thinking about is it's important to remember that you are also being interviewed, even though you have the opportunity, right? And so when I'm on here, I like to throw some stats and I just enjoy these types of things. So, a few things we do know about the current world of hiring. Gartner did a study that it's actually 50% more unlikely that your offer will be accepted. So, that's down from 83% from 2 years ago, and it's 48% more unlikely than it used to be. 1 in 6 job offers are actually declined. So I started learning a little bit more about this because, we have a pretty extensive and thorough interview process. Usually we're doing anywhere from 4 to 6 interviews. And I've seen sometimes clients spend less than 4 to 6 minutes in actually talking about why this candidate should choose them after we've gone through this process. So I think it's always important for people to know that you're being interviewed through this process just as much as you want to interview someone else.
Yes. Yeah, and I think people don't keep that in mind at all. I'm surprised how many, here's what I'm going to say. Those stats surprise me because of our
Yeah.
stats. Our stats are not that way. Now, we do have an extensive process. We do take people through. So I think we are selling them on the job the whole time.
Right.
But let's talk about like how can you do that? What does that look like? Like what does selling the job really mean to you, Steve?
Yeah, I love that question. To me, it means talking about why this person is a good fit. One of the things that's become more obvious to us is we hired a culture, we hired a values, we hired a vision.
Yeah.
If you are not sharing those things throughout an interview process with your candidates, I think you're missing a really big opportunity. And I do think there's a higher chance that you're going to be in that 1 out of 6. I mean, the quick story I would share around some of it is we had a really, very specific and kind of critical client, which we value as a company. We think that it's really important to dig really deep. But the thing I just never forget, it was almost like the job offer was kind of plopped in front of them. And it was like, here you go, take
Yeah.
it or don't take it. They were almost like unattached.
Yep.
And if you're approaching something these days like that, I really do think a lot of candidates, more and more candidates and people in the work world are looking for, it's not as much about the money as it used to be. We know that there's a generational shift happening with millennials and especially Gen Z is becoming the largest part of the workforce now. And they are much more in tune with, what kind of work-life balance do I want? Does this company match my values? So they're almost making these decisions internally, and it's not as much a transactional relationship. So to answer your question, Lindsay, I would say a big part of it is talking about, we're going to ask them questions about them and maybe learn a little bit more about them personally. I would encourage employers talk about your life, talk about why you started this thing, share your vision, share how this person would fit within that vision, share. Okay, maybe you're hiring them for a specific position, but what would growth look like? We always hear from candidates that they're looking for growth. What does that mean? Share if they did choose you and you're an independent business, what might a growth path really look like? So I think if I were going to answer it simply, share your vision, share your values, share why this person would fit into those things.
Yeah, one of the things I wrote down when like looking at this, I actually have to use my glasses at the moment, was and I want to see what you think of this, because we haven't even talked about this, even though we talked about everything. Um, I wrote down candidates don't accept jobs, they accept futures. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, just in, we've had some people leave us recently, and I think they were very much looking at their futures. What do I want my new married life to look like? What do I want my day-to-day look like? Do I want to commute anymore that looks like this, or do I want to be closer to my, person, and so on. So I think, you know, I've started to really uh, I've started to think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
If we put that into the context of this, well, one, I want to know what you think of that. But two, I want to see, how do we sell the future? Because I think somebody can talk about themselves and be like, I created this company to do this and to do that. And,
Yeah.
I have a great story, right? Like, so I can sell my
Right.
story to some degree, but like they have to buy into that story and see themselves in that story in the future,
Yes.
right?
That's right. Well, and a basic premise of one of the things that I tell people all the time is people do things for their reasons, not yours.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're building a team, you want it to be bigger than just you. But one more stat from Gartner. So both of these things that I've researched are from Glassdoor and Gartner. We'll include that in the write-up here.
Yeah.
But this one really did surprise me too that I didn't even include yet. Nearly half of candidates keep looking even after they've accepted the offer.
I
That
know.
just blows me away. I don't love it. I kind of hate it, but it is what it is. That
Yeah.
that is what the market is telling us. That is how the market has changed. So again, I do think if you're not sharing the story of how this could change their life at all, you're missing an opportunity on finding the best people. Yes, we are still allowed to have expectations of employees, and we're hiring them to do something for us. But I think if you're just going about this in the way it used to be done and it's either right or it's not right, you're going to be looking a lot harder than you might need to. And I do think you're going to miss out on maybe some really good people in securing even after the offer. So,
Yeah. Just to tag on to that, people ask me all the time, and I actually have a video that's coming out in our social media about this at some point. But people ask me all the time, like, why are you sending me this resume that, somebody's only been there for 3 or 4 months or 6 months or whatever, or one
yeah.
month, and like all of a sudden they're applying to this. And that is a stat I have been using recently is like they took a job because they needed it. I'm being told that your job is the one they really want. Do we want somebody who would even consider that? I can't believe how many
Yeah.
I see it a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of that happening. So I'm really glad that you brought that out. All right, last thing, what type of ROI is really here? Like if you miss the boat on selling, what are you missing out on ROI wise?
Yeah, I mean, I always look at time as money, that old saying. So, like, just think about going all the way through a process and then finding the right person. Let's say you spend, here's what I would ask my business owners out there. What is your per hour charge?
Yep.
If you spend 5 hours interviewing someone and you just skip this last little step, I know what my per hour is. That's a lot of money that you're throwing out the door right there. And we've always shared the stats on, an employee has a 3x cost if they're the wrong fit. So like those are stats we always stand by. But like I would just encourage you if you want to think through using your time well and you spend 4 or 5 hours interviewing someone, and let's just say, hey, I'm worth $200 an hour. That's $800 right there. Okay, maybe that's not impossible, but like this is something that can happen over and over and over again if you don't learn these some of these basic principles of this. So, as far as the ROI, I think this is more of a best practice today. I do think you're going to be more limited in the talent pool if you don't start to rethink your hiring practice. If it's, oh, well, this is always the way it's been done. That was the way it was when I was working. Those rules do not matter to the candidates that are out there today. So, it's an adapt or die kind of a thing is the way I look at it. And so we are not looking for perfection ever. I think all people, employers and employees, are looking and craving more authenticity. So, like, you don't need to, have some kind of a pie in the sky vision that you're sharing with them, or a go to the moon type way of thinking. But I think you do need to really share with people and have an authentic conversation. And I only think that's fair. In my opinion, if this person has really sold themselves for 4 or 5 hours and they've gone through an extensive process, and you can't really give them 30 minutes to tell them why they're the right choice and sell you a little bit, right? And have an elevator pitch on why you're the right company, then I think that stat kind of speaks for itself a little bit, and they're going to go to your competition.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way and we'll finish with this, right? The extra 15 minutes, right, in selling the opportunity, means potentially, if you do it well, right? I do
Yeah.
think this is a practice thing too, but candidate becomes more emotionally invested. The offer acceptance increases based on what you were talking about there. Searches, restart less often, I would say is one of those things. Positions fill faster.
Yes.
Revenue starts sooner, retention improves, hopefully, and then that just means we have a higher ROI on every hire, I think. So
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much. As always, if you have a desire to talk to Steve or myself about these things or anything you heard today, please reach out. Um, you can just do sales at Ciprani Consulting. You hit both of us with that. If you want some consulting around hiring, we are doing that. We've done that for multiple people recently. If you want us to hire, we're here to help. So thanks, Steve, for your time.
Thank you.
We will send this out with the one pager soon. The one pager will be below in here too. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.